Join me in a word of prayer. In the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts, be acceptable in your sight, and the Lord our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. This morning I'm going to talk a lot about community. God creates us to live in community. It's in our DNA that we cannot live isolated. We have to live in community. And the perfect community that God gives to us, reveals to us, is that of God. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We can't get better community than that. God desires for us to live in community. And community ranges all the way from, yesterday we had a wedding in York, from 2 people getting married, that's a community, to families are a community. To sports teams are communities. To civic groups, to villages, to towns, to nations, to the world itself. Well, it goes from very small to very large. Community. And no community is perfect. No human community is perfect. But the stronger each member of the community is, the stronger the entire community becomes. The stronger and healthier the whole village is, the stronger and more healthy is every member of the community. And so, we innately have a sense that we need to support one another, to be with one another in time of need, because we have that innate sense from God that we live within community. Hopefully all that sounds really good. It should sound really good, because it is really good that God creates us to live in community. But of course there's a downside to that, isn't there? Any one member of a community has the capability of tearing apart that community. And that is what happened in our life. One member tore apart that community. When a father and an uncle deliberately set fire to the house and deliberately destroyed their family. They did it within community, and that entire community was torn, and it remains torn. It's like you take a huge boulder and you dump it into a little pond. The ripples affect those closest to the boulder, and they ripple out and affect everything. The Argyle community has been torn, and those closest to them have also been torn, and our reactions are the reactions of anybody who has been hurt and damaged. We are hurt, we're angry, we cannot conceive of how any parent could possibly ever do this to any child of theirs, and we want justice or revenge. I've heard a lot of samples of what we might be willing to do to these 2 individuals. Does that pretty well sum up how we're doing? I guess we could add to that, couldn't we? The sense of safety within our community has been damaged. We hold our children a little closer than we did before. Our world does not seem as healthy as it once was. To hear that God desires for us that we live in healthy communities is a tremendously good thing to hear. But how do you do it when your community has been torn apart? How do you do it? And where is God in the midst of it all? That's why this story of Joseph and his brothers is such a good story to have for us today. Because we see in Joseph and his brothers a community that was healthy and whole, then torn apart, and then healed and brought back together again. Listening to that story and its message may be of some help and guidance to us. I won't reveal the whole story because we've already heard the story twice, so I'm just going to go ahead for a little bit here and find out where I need to be. Because I reviewed the whole story, and I can't do that again today because you already know. Okay, first, here's the first reality, is that there's a community. And the community is that family. And the family was full and complete, and then it got torn to shreds. And there were trouble on all sides. Everybody did something wrong. The father never should have lifted up one of his sons and says, "You are my favorite son." He never ever should have given him that hope. That was wrong. Joseph should never have revealed his dream to his brothers thinking, "Look at me. they should never have sold their brother into slavery. All of these things are wrong. When God saw this family torn to shreds like this, God should have said, I'm done with you. I don't have anything to do with you guys anymore. You guys don't get it at all. I'm going to a family who fully understands that. But God didn't do that. And so that's the first lesson we can learn from this. That God never deserts us. That God is always with us. No matter what we do, no matter who we are, no matter what we ever do in our lives, God is always there working with us. God never, ever abandons us. So that's the first thing to learn from the story. Second thing to learn is looking at the characters of it. Take a look at Joseph. What did Joseph do wrong? He was very arrogant, wasn't he? He told his brothers about this dream. He says, look at me. Look how great I am. God has chosen me, not you. You will bow down to me. Joseph had the sin of believing that God was on his side. What a tremendous sin that is. When we think we have God on our side, we do an awful lot of damage. We begin to judge other people. We begin to lord it over other people. We begin to claim that we are right and everybody else is wrong because, after all, God is on our side. But God works with Joseph. And Joseph learns and grows and changes over the years. When Joseph stands before Pharaoh and says, I can interpret your dream, but it isn't me interpreting your dream. It's God who's interpreted your dream. I am just God's mouthpiece to you. Joseph has already learned something. That God is not on Joseph's side, but Joseph had better be on God's side. The time of being sold into slavery and the time of being thrown into the prison for a sin he did not commit could have gone two ways for Joseph. He could have been cemented in his idea that he is right and everybody else is wrong, that God is on his side, and then he would have turned bitter and resentful. He could have thought, if I ever find those brothers of mine again, boy, are they going to get it. Because I'm going to have power and they're not. And I'm going to treat them as they treated me. Instead, God worked with Joseph. And he led Joseph to understand that God wasn't on his side. But Joseph had better be on God's side. Joseph began to see what was important about this life was that as much as possible, if he would follow what God commands, the community could be restored again. And he needed to be about God's mission. And so the years of plenty came. 7 years of good harvest. And then the years of drought came. 7 years of drought. Now come the brothers. The years of drought, sometime within those 7, 8, 9, 10 years, the brothers came to Joseph and said, we need food. They had no idea who Joseph was. They didn't know their brother was even alive. Joseph knew them. But the transformation of Joseph was now complete. He was not going to lord it over them. Instead, he had to give it to them. So here's a second or third thought. That God is with us. And the third thought is, nothing happens instantaneously. Alright? It took 7, 8, 9, 10 years for Joseph to get to the point where he could forgive his brothers. With God working in our lives, it still takes a lot of time. We're not expected to release our anger, our frustration, our pain, our sorrow at the drop of a hat. God never expects us to do that. God gives us all the emotions that we have, and then God always expects us to use those emotions in the appropriate way. But eventually, the healing has to happen. Eventually, the community has to be restored. For some, that'll take just a few days. They're pretty far removed from the situation. For others, it'll take weeks. For some, it'll take years and years and years. The essential thing to remember is that we don't engage in this restoration process by ourselves. We can't do it by ourselves, but God is with us every step of the way. God gives us the power of love and grace. And God works with Joseph every single day. And so the resentment toward his brothers was washed away eventually, replaced by the desire to forgive and that community could be restored. They're brothers. Why? They're brothers. They wanted their brother dead, and they actually sold him into slavery. What did they think they were going to get out of that? How did they think it would possibly ever work? A momentary pleasure of finally getting rid of this obnoxious brother of theirs, followed by years and years of the rest of their life knowing that they had done something tremendously wrong. 8, 9 years later, when they come to Egypt hungry, when their cattle are dying, they're challenged by Joseph, even though they don't know it's him. Will they do it again? Will they commit that sin again? Will they give up another brother? That's the challenge they're facing. And they respond to the challenge saying, we're not going to do this again. We've learned our lesson. We will never give up another brother. We will sacrifice ourselves in the face of our brother. God has been at work in their lives and in their hearts all those years. They could not give up another brother. Their community was now as restored as it could possibly be. Amazing. God will never leave anyone alone. Even if we know people who do not deserve God's grace and love, and we don't want them to even have God's grace and love, God will still show those people grace and love. And so in the end, restitution today, the community of the family is restored. A lot of changes happened. A lot of change and healing had occurred. First, Joseph, not trying to have God on his side, but now trying to do the will of God. And then the brothers, realizing that they had to stand together. Forgiveness comes with the help and power and grace of God. Fourth, no one is left out. God is with the brothers, and God, as hard as it is to believe, is with that father and that uncle as well. We can and should pray to God that God might turn their hearts, that they might see their wrong, and then work for restitution, knowing full well that complete restitution will never, ever be accomplished. There's always going to be a deep and abiding scar in their life. Healing will occur. And it will occur as we look about us. How can we be the people of God in this place at this time, right here and now? How better can we care for our families, for our school children, for our communities? How better can we be the people of God right here, right now, caring for all those who are pain and hurting in Argyle, and also, as hard as it is to hear, caring for those who cause the pain. It's a tall order. I know what it is. It's the last thing we want to do. This being of the people of God in this place at this time, it's a dangerous thing to do. It's hard. But you know something? With God's love, grace, and guidance, we can do it. We can be with the people of our God, both those who are hurting and those who cause pain. It's not instantaneous, okay? It takes a long time. It takes prayer, thought, it takes understanding one another. It takes taking care of our children and our families and our communities. I know the anger is there, it's real. I don't understand how God can do that. But God still loves us, man. And we as Christians need to do it. With God's grace, we